Johnny Gaudreau all the way around. Gaudreau shoots, scores a beauty.
Gaudreau with Kachuk in the corner. Back to Johnny Gaudreau. Gaudreau in front. Feeds a pass to Leo. Stopped by Ottinger. Took it high. Gaudreau scores! Took 63 shots to get 3 past Ottinger. Johnny Gaudreau with the overtime winner. What a game.
Hey folks, welcome to this week's episode of What's Bruin. A little bit of a different intro for tonight. As I'm sure everybody watching knows, we lost 2 incredible people and a couple incredible hockey players late last week. I'm joined, as I am every week, by my co-host, Dom Tiano. Dom, obviously we have to start with the story of the week, of the month, of the training camp as it is right now, with the tragic loss of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. Obviously, we start the show with a morning topic. We got plenty of other stuff to get to, but how are you this Tuesday evening, Dom?
I'm doing okay. Still a little bit depressed about the news. You know, I woke up Friday morning, 4:30 in the morning, saw the news right away. It still hadn't been confirmed by a major source, and when it finally was, it hit me, and hit me hard. And my first thoughts, Chris, are always to the family and those that are left behind. And, you know, I thought about my own personal tragedy. 16 years ago, I lost my wife and my mother 2 days apart and buried them the same day. And I thought, I know what the family's going through. And then when I sat and thought about it all weekend long, I thought, no, I don't have a clue what they're going through. It was supposed to be a joyous and happy weekend with their sister's wedding that Friday. And to have their lives snuffed out by a selfish, greedy, immature murderer is totally different. I can't, for the life of me, comprehend what that family is going through. And it hit me hard. It really did. But to see that the respect both Johnny and Maddie had around the world. I mean, we've all saw the videos, other sports, players in other sports, European leagues, like, you know, the Olympic qualifiers were going on. Before every game, they had a moment of silence. We saw it in baseball. We saw it in football. We saw it in soccer. We saw it in lacrosse. It just, you know, incredible hockey players, yes, but when you read all the stuff that's been said about the pair, incredible people off the ice as well. And they were taken far too soon.
Yeah, that as you said, incredible people off the ice. That's the part I think that is the biggest takeaway from all this. We all saw what Johnny was capable of on the rink. We saw what they did at BC and, you know, in college and all that stuff. Like the highlights will always be there. It's the impact off the ice that we're seeing. Just all the tributes. I mean, you can see a place that he hasn't played for 3 years, a place that in Calgary, let's be honest, probably had a little bit of resentment for him when he chose to go to Columbus and leave Calgary after, 9 seasons there. That none of that matters. And
right.
And to see how big that memorial got, just shows you who these people were and what they meant just by walking in the room, really. And you said that you woke up around 4:30 the Friday morning, which is kind of humorous because I was on the other end of it. I saw one of the first like 2 tweets on the subject at right around 8:30, and I was chasing it until about 3 o'clock in the morning, just trying to find something. And it just seemed like every time I refreshed, every time I tried to dig, it was always people were assuming it was true. I saw the tweet, that I saw it was gone, and just trying to find any sort of reputable information. And it was kind of around that 1:30 a.m. time frame where the feeling turned to, since no one's denying it, since no one is giving any updates on anything, maybe this actually did happen. And then, of course, by the time it got to about 3 o'clock, I'm practically falling asleep at my desk going, I got to sort this out in the morning. Woke up and saw the statement from the Blue Jackets, and it just was completely surreal. So I do want to get to some of the comments here. We do have Kevin jumping in. Sup, fellas? Matrix is joined us for the program as well. Cameron says howdy. TB19 says love the Johnny nod. Appreciate that. Obviously it's not much, but it's a little something that I feel like we can do. Appreciate the kind words there. We got primetime prods in the house as well, getting ready to jump on, record Something's Brewing. But they say what's up. And Matrix obviously is offering condolences for the situation that you had to go through as well. But just absolute tragic. And it's just awful. And you really got to feel for the Blue Jackets organization and their fans, because they just went through a tragedy 3 years ago with Cleveland Eeks passing away over the holiday weekend of July 4th. And it just terrible.
There was a picture that went around on Twitter. I don't know if you saw it, of Johnny Gaudreau taking a shot on him in practice from a few years ago. And the caption was, "Going on in heaven right now."
Yes, I did see that one.
Yeah,
I did see that one.
That one brought a tear to my eye.
It just it really puts the pleasure of what we do, the hockey world in general, in perspective. And obviously we can't just not touch on it, but this is a Bruin show. We do want to move on to some of the more happier, I guess you could say, things going on right now for our Boston Bruins. Today was a huge day. First day of captain's practices. There's a nice little roster someone put together on Twitter. I was trying to track it down before the show, but couldn't, of who was there. But you had Swayman there. Marchand was there. All 3 goalies were there, aside from Swayman. Bussy was there. Korpisalo was there. I mean, there was 25 plus people at the captain's practice.
Yeah, good to see.
So great turnout.
Fabian Lysell was not.
Yep, he wasn't there. He may show up later in the week. I don't know what his travel schedule looked like, but it sounds like he was just getting in from being out of town not too long ago, so he may not have been able to make the first day. Ian also says, not to brag, but I was right about Johnson being a Bruins PTO. Tyler Johnson was a name that I threw out there about a month ago as well. Do you want to start with the captain's practice, the PTO? Where do you want to start when it comes to the Bruins, Dom?
We'll come back to the Johnson PTO because I'm still debating on my head what I want to say. By the way, folks, I'm ornery tonight, so you may hate some of the things I have to say, but I think most of you know me. I don't hold anything back, and I speak the truth. So just be prepared for that.
And Matrix points out Zadorov wasn't at captain's practice either. So again, I'm not trying to throw shade at Lysell or anything like that. It's a captain's practice. It's the first one. Like, I'm not all that worried about it. It's just nice to see a lot of these guys come together and skate together for the first time. So, Mr. Ordinary Dom, where do you want to start? What's the first thought that you have when it comes to the captain's practices?
Well, the news Brad Marchand threw out there, a couple of pieces. One, his contract situation and how he's not going to discuss it in the media. And there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there saying he's talking to Jeremy Swayman. That's who it was intended for, and it's not. Brad Marchand has never discussed contract situation or details in the media. He grew up under Chara and Bergeron, and there was nothing intended there for Jeremy Swayman. The second piece is when he told the gathered media that he had 3 surgeries in the offseason, which explains a lot about last season. So, Marchand was getting ripped a lot by people in the playoffs. We never know what's going on until after it's over. So just a little, even then.
Even then, at the end of last year, I think it was Don Sweeney who came out and said there were no off-season surgeries planned.
Right. So just sometimes criticism is necessary. But I think with Brad Marchand, some of the criticism he received was unwarranted and, maybe bite our tongues a little bit.
Yeah. Without the knowledge of the injuries, I don't think it was wrong to question kind of what was going on. Is something going on with Brad Marchand? Is it just play falling off? But now it makes a lot more sense. But to your point, just outright ripping the guy doesn't really make a lot of sense until you have all that information. And Craig jumps in and says, Dom, let it rip.
Oh, I will.
So
I will.
But all I can say is I'm pumped that he's healthy. He's had the surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's a little bit behind schedule from where he wants to be, but I don't see that being an issue. I really don't. If the fact that the injuries are healed and repaired is more important than where he is right now on September 3rd when the season doesn't start for over a month.
Right. Now, we can segue that into Tyler Johnson because here's my thoughts. I know he was the one name that you brought up over a month ago. And I thought, you know what? No, he's not what the Bruins have been doing off season, the type of players that they've been bringing in, the type of players that they drafted. And our good friend Court Lalonde touched on this today. He brought it up on his show. Unfortunately, he got to air before we did. But I don't think that's what they're looking for in Johnson. They're hoping that he can bring the skill side. The loss of DeBrusk is where I'm thinking the Bruins are thinking there. And the fact that if Brad Marchand isn't ready to go, although he says he will be, but if he isn't, I think that's why Tyler Johnson was brought in.
Yeah, Johnson being brought in makes a lot more sense when you hear about the Brad Marchand surgeries and as he's working his way back. For me, Tyler Johnson was appealing because of the versatility, and he has, the Stanley Cup pedigree, something that quickly this team is starting to lose as, now Krejci's moved on, as Bergeron's moved on, Chara's moved on. It's, you still have your leaders in the locker room, but Tyler Johnson was someone who, and again, just as a PTO, like you want to see, I'm not saying throw a contract at the guy. If someone else was willing to offer him $1.5 million for the year, then fine. But you're able to get him on a PTO, which has no risk really at all for you. You can see what he has. I love the move. He can play the left side. He can play the right side. He can play the middle. He fits the mold of someone who can come in and kind of put a jolt under Merkulov, under Liesel, under even Riley Duran to sit there and go, this is a professional who can come in and take the job from you. So you need to be ready. This is what you're fighting against to take this role. Yes, Matrix.
I think you can include Poitras in that list as well.
Poitras too, I'm sure. Matrix says, correct me if I'm wrong, but Johnson can play both wing and center. Yeah, he can play both wings, all three. And so for me, that's where I saw the value in him, because to your point, you lost to Brusque. You needed to push the little guys. Ian says he's an upgrade from JVR. He's,
well, that's in my opinion, remains to be seen.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in my opinion, the upgrade is the fact that he can play center, JVR can't. So it just offers you a little bit more versatility. And I believe Johnson's a couple of years younger. So in trying to get a little younger there. And as Kendall says, do you think Johnson seems like an insurance for Poitras? I think he's just an insurance policy for the top 9 in general, because of his versatility. I think he's literally the guy that's coming in and saying, we will pencil him in wherever we see we are weakest on day one. So if Poitras comes in and he's the weak link in the top 9 forward group, well, then you might see Johnson play 3C until Poitras gets his act together. If it's the right side wing on the second line next to Coyle, you might see Johnson start there, and they tell Liesel, go take it from him. Bear Force 1 says, as for players on PTO, glad they're bringing in Johnson over Wheeler.
I had no interest in Wheeler. None.
Yeah, I liked Johnson better because, in my opinion, he can push more of the players. Wheeler is more of just one side of a winger, and you were just really hoping that if Liesel wasn't ready, then maybe you could fill in for him. But in general, I like the idea of Johnson as well. Matrix agreeing as well.
To add to that is, it's why when we're in the dog days of summer, don't believe all the rumors that are out there.
Yeah.
You know, people still need to write articles. They still need to do podcasts. They still need people to read, and they still need people to watch. And sometimes
they still need clicks.
Yeah, it's sometimes you have to make stories up. I don't. Chris doesn't. But sometimes you have to. And, you know, we all saw the Wheeler and Yamamoto PTOs.
Yeah, and obviously there was a lot of talk for a few teams about Zadina. And, of course, he's not even playing in the U.S. this year. So it's, you know.
Or Canada.
Or Canada, yeah, for that matter. Good point. And then also at captain's practice, we saw Jeremy Swayman. I know there's going to be a lot of people using the infamous H word in a couple weeks if he's not practicing when the real practices start. But we have to be clear, this isn't a holdout. He doesn't have a contract. He cannot be on the ice when official team duties start. It's not a holdout.
Well, he can here because it's not official team duty.
That's why I said when official team practices start, he can't be on the ice with the team.
Right.
Because he doesn't have a contract. So before we dive too far into the contract options, and it's a big thing that came out earlier in the week, do you think it means anything, the fact that Swayman's at these captains' practices? What do you take away from that? I think it just goes to show he's still committed to the Bruins.
Definitely. There's a lot of things about the whole Swayman situation that I don't like. And unfortunately, because only one side has done any talking publicly, and that being Swayman himself, you can only judge what's being said. Okay. And there's a lot of things that Swayman has said that has really irked me. And this is where you people are going to be upset at me, but I'm going to tell it like it is. Okay. Last summer, we heard Jeremy Swayman bitch and moan and complain that he didn't like the arbitration process. He even brought it up again this year. And here's what I got to say about that. Jeremy Swayman, thank goodness you take goddamn business classes, because I'll tell you what, your agent ain't doing your job for you. Number one, it is the agent's responsibility to ensure that you are prepared for what is going to happen in the arbitration process should it go to an actual hearing. Obviously, if you were unprepared or if you were taken aback by what happened, Louis Gross did not prepare you for it. Secondly, your agent, Louis Gross, knows what he was asking for in arbitration. Louis Gross, your agent, knows what the Bruins were offering in arbitration. Why the fuck didn't your agent go to the Bruins and say, okay, we know the arbitrator is going to settle in the middle, never sides with one side or the other, and let's get the 1 year deal done at $3.4 million, because that's what the arbitrator is going to come in at. That's your agent, Jeremy Swayman, not doing his goddamn job. So luckily for you, you took your own business classes, and I hope you got high grade average in it, because you're going to need it, because this guy's going to take you to the woodshed so he can pocket his 5 goddamn % of your paycheck every time you get one.
Shaz jumps in. Preach, Dom.
It's true.
Matrix
it's true.
Says Dom's on fucking fire.
Let me even take it a step further. Okay. Even if Louis Gross didn't prepare him for arbitration, everybody in the hockey world knows the damn stories of players coming out crying because of what just happened in arbitration. What the New York Islanders said about what's his name? I forget the goalie's name at the time.
It wasn't
came out crying.
Okay.
No, came out crying after arbitration.
Someone in the comments will know.
Just a simple Google search will tell you. So when he whines about the arbitration process, go fuck yourself, man. Blame your agent for not preparing you for it, and blame yourself for not doing your homework. Stop whining about it. There, I've ranted. It's the truth, man. It's
it
the 100%
truth. Is the truth, and obviously that's why we have 5, 6, 7, 8 comments in a row, all synonymous. Preach, you're on fire, 100% agreement. Like it's 100% true, and that's why I know there was a lot of stake. He was on I don't even remember the name of the show that he was on. It was a great get for whatever the show was, but unfortunately no one remembers the show. They just remember the Swayman quote where he talks about, if you'd asked me the question last year, but this year I'm going to give you a more educated answer, that kind of thing. It's if he's gone back and learned a few things, great. What that tells me, if anything, is he is more confident in his ability this year to tell his agent to screw and to just get a fucking deal done, because he's realized that it's more important that he plays where he wants to play. Bear Force One says it was Tommy Sallow who you were thinking of.
Yeah, I think it was.
Then to your point of his agent getting his cut because he wants to push for the extra $1 million. And Swayman at this point, I think, has a lot more maturity than he did last year at this time, in the sense that he is okay with stepping in when he has to just get it done. We said it, I think it was last week's show. We had to remind people the agent works for the player. So right now, Swayman is sitting there going, you do your thing. It's not the end of the world right now. If we can get a deal in place between now and then, fine. But Jeremy Swayman also should know he can't miss a year. And the Bruins don't have to trade him. No one's going to offer sheet him. So he knows the deal's going to get done. He knows that it's going to be with the Bruins, and he knows that it won't be an underpayment. Now, real quick, Cameron says, didn't Gross butt heads with Sweeney over the Krug contract?
What happened was there was a deal on the table by the Bruins. It was a take it or leave it deal, and Gross was asking for more, and the Bruins pulled the contract off the table. And they should have. There's no way they should have paid. Yeah, there's no way they should have. You think St. Louis doesn't regret that contract? They've already tried it.
Yeah, they've regretted it 2 years after they signed it.
Yeah. So credit to Sweeney for that one.
Matrix says University of Maine is one of the best business schools in the country. Doesn't mean he did well in the classes, though, Matrix. Although yeah, I hope he did. I hope he did. And there's a comment back here from Ian I wanted to address, too. He says, Spit and Chiclet says that the Bruins only offered Swayman a $6.5 million for 4-year contract. Now, I have heard other reports that they haven't offered a max 8-year contract, which doesn't make sense for either side. Let's be clear. Like, I know if they weren't so far apart in statistical and comparables, really, I mean, that was the part that I wanted a follow-up question done on that pod. He goes, I know who my comparables are. Great. Who are they? Because none of us fucking can tell.
Exactly. Look, I will say this about rumors. It's like I said, it's the dog days of summer. I said right from the beginning, I don't believe the $10 million ask rumor. I don't. I've been waiting for somebody, one of the insiders, to come in with fire hoses and fire extinguishers, or to put out the fire, or to add gasoline on the fire and say it was true. Those that have commented on it have said it's not true.
Yeah, or they don't believe it. They can't, whether they could verify it or not, they just don't believe that the number is there because it's just too outrageously unreasonable to ask for.
And I don't believe $6.5 million is the Bruins offer. Look, the Bruins went shopping in the offseason, restricted free agency, and there's a reason why they've left themselves with $8.6 million in cap space. If they were only offering 6.5 and thought they could get him for 6.5, they would have done something with at least $1 million out of that $2 million difference.
Yeah. Real quick, Matrix says that Frank Cervelli shot down the 10 million ask. I don't know where I haven't seen it, but I'll believe it.
I think it was on a podcast that it was on a podcast.
Okay.
But I just don't believe any of the numbers that are being thrown out. I don't.
No. And I think a lot of it comes down. Could they have offered him a 4-year contract? Maybe. I wouldn't shoot down the term, but I think both sides look at it in terms of a 4 or 5 year contract, or at least the Bruins are. It just, I don't worry yet that the deal's not going to get done, because the way Swayman is acting just tells me that he knows and he's confident that if he needs to, he will step in like William Nylander did last year and say to his agent, you work for me, get a contract signed. I'm not missing a year of salary. And at that point, the agent will get the best deal available and say, this is what I've got. And he will sign it. David asks, do you think the Swayman's contract talks will hurt the chemistry in the room?
No, not
No,
at all.
because
They
all the players, the reason why the players have an agent is so that you can have your gripes and the general manager can have the gripes with their agent. That's what the agent is meant for.
it's even easier than that. These are professional hockey players. They know it's a business.
Well, that too.
And that's all it is. It's a business.
Real quick, I know we already talked a little bit about it, but Cam apparently is jumping in late. He wants to know thoughts on the Johnson PTO and if we're concerned with Martian confirming the elbow, abdominal, and groin surgeries. So,
Well,
Cam,
the two go together. That's one of the reasons that they probably brought Johnson in is if Marchand isn't ready to go, but by all accounts, Marchand says he will be ready to go. And the other reason is you can't bring a 6'3" guy who can't skate to try and take the place of Jake DeBrusk. And that's why Tyler Johnson is there. Or in the event that a Lee Sell or a Patra aren't ready to go, that he could take their spot.
yeah, and of course Merkulov in that grouping as well. Let's see. Matrix says once a contract for Swayman is taken care of, don't be one bit surprised if Swayman shit cans Lewis Gross.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I was going to say I wouldn't be surprised if it happened before a deal got done.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
That could be what. Yeah, that could be what gets the deal done. Is if he says, "Listen, you're not representing me the way that I want. You're fired." Hires a new agent, and then 48 hours later, a deal is signed. I wouldn't be surprised at all by any of that. Like, Swayman clearly wants to be in Boston. That's why I'm not worried, as David was asking about the chemistry in the room. He wants to be here. His teammates want him here. They know he wants to be here. It's the writing is all on the wall for it to get done. If the agent is the one standing in the way, the player will move the agent out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
That's also part of the business.
It happens.
So now the big question. Two big questions. Earlier today, we saw Leon Draisaitl sign an 8-year contract with a $14 million AAV. How does that, if at all, do you think it could affect Swayman's situation in his contract negotiations? Me personally, I don't think it'll have an effect on him at all.
Well, actually, it does. It'll stop the wishful thinking Bruins fans of a Swayman for Draisaitl trade.
Well, yes. That's not a real thing. That's why I said it doesn't change anything for me, because I never, ever was buying into that or any of that.
That's why I said the wishful thinking ones, because it was never going to happen. Two, I hope it puts to rest that nobody wants to play in the Canadian team. We saw Allmark go to Ottawa. We're hearing Allmark might re-sign with Ottawa. Draisaitl signs with Edmonton. Good for him. He's the second best, as far as I'm concerned, the second best player in the world. He deserves to get paid.
Yeah, actually, two-ish weeks ago, I think, I sat down with Julian McKenzie of The Athletic for an episode of Puck Off, and he had given me a start bench cut, and they were Draisaitl, Austin Matthews, and Matthew Tkachuk. So I'm right there with you. Leon Draisaitl is easily the second best player in the league right now. It wasn't that hard to pick him as the starter in that scenario. I don't think when it comes to Swayman's contract and the negotiations regarding his contract, I don't think it changes anything.
No.
It changes more, like you said, off the ice with the fans and the clickbait and all that crap that people try to buy into. That can all stop now.
Mm-hmm.
Period. End of story. And I also think that it makes that $10 million ask a little bit less believable, because why would he get 10 if Draisaitl just got 14? They're not $4 million apart in AAV.
No.
David says nope. McKinnon is the second best player in the game right now.
I said in my opinion, and you're entitled to yours, David.
Yeah, I mean it's a neck and neck conversation. I'll put it that way. There's reasons for both you could make. I think the passing ability that Draisaitl has is, almost second to none. There's valid reasons for both. So let's see. Cam says, who do you guys think is the most underrated team in the NHL? I'm going with Nashville. The problem with that, Cam, is a lot of people are picking Nashville. And
I'm going Utah.
I was going to say, so Nashville isn't becoming underrated. They're becoming a lot of people's picks. Utah, I like that pick. I'll think about it a little bit more. I'm still seeing a couple of these other comments I want to get to real quick. Mike says, we don't think that massive AAV supports the whole no one wants to play in California. I don't think so. I don't think California had anything to do with it, because when it comes to Draisaitl, Edmonton had the
Canada.
8th year. Oh, Canada. Either way. Edmonton had the 8th year that they could offer. So that also goes a long way. Bear Force 1 says, agree, David, would have McKinnon ahead as number 2, ahead of Draisaitl. Ian asks, would you do Swayman for Zegras and Gibson and a first? I'm not
They're
sure
not trading Swayman.
I'm not even sure the Ducks would offer that. So in general, let's see. Joel says, I hate the Habs, but I take the Habs. Joel, in my opinion, I think the Habs are still a little bit too young. They're still getting in through that development phase. So I think they're still a little bit of ways away from being ready to go right there. I actually, you know what? I think an underrated team this year that a lot of people are going to overlook, Detroit. They barely missed the playoffs last year, and they addressed a couple holes that they had, and they're going to have some young kids who are ready to step up and take a swing at it. So they're definitely going to be an interesting team to watch, and they're already
By the way, have they re-signed Sider yet?
They haven't re-signed Sider or Raymond yet.
I was going to ask Raymond next. You were supposed to ask.
Once those two are on the books. I have a feeling they're going through the same thing we're going through right now with Jeremy Swayman, because there's a few other guys that are like that as well. The other team I would think might not be as popular. Some people might disagree with it, but Washington just has got together a group of village idiots again, and we've seen what that can buy into. Last year, I know they squeaked in and had a horrible plus minus, but Jacob Chikrin is now going to quarterback their power play. Ovechkin is going to have a little bit more of a
over Carlson?
Probably.
I don't think so.
Carlson's getting up there.
Carlson can do number 1. Chikrin can do number 2.
Either way, it bolsters their power play on both sides. So it's going to help their defense regardless. I do think they got a little bit better in goal as well. As Cam says, the Washington Misfits. Kevin says, clearly everybody's wrong. Nick Ritchie's the second best player. So, but I think Detroit and Washington are going to surprise more people this year. Let's see. I thought there was one other comment that I had missed, but I don't think so. Cam now adds, they do have solid nucleus of players, but can it work? Odd makeup of players. Look, the other thing too is Spencer Carberry did a fantastic job behind the bench for him last year. And if you look at where he's coached, he's brought some success. So there's something about him. He gets players to buy in. He did it last year. I just think they're going to be as good as they were last year, plus a little bit. Will they go and make this deep playoff run? Probably not. I mean, look at the rest of the East. But I just don't think enough people are talking about them coming into this season. So, like I said, last week, there was another incident. A contract was signed, Dom, and I knew as soon as I saw it, as soon as I saw Frank Saravalli tweet it, he had a nice little breakdown of it. I knew that this was going to be this week's Dom special.
Oh,
We have now been introduced to the deferred contract.
well, here's the thing with it. Number one, people assume this is a new loophole. And why it hasn't been done before. Well, it was done before with Shane Doan and the Arizona Coyotes. I believe was 2015. Here's the thing. I looked it up in the CBA because I have my copy of the CBA. And the words deferred salary or deferred bonuses appears in the CBA 116 times.
That's quite a bit.
That's the truth. So for anybody who has never read the CBA, okay, I can understand. For people that have, including Evan Gold, who is the Bruins legal master, contract negotiator, cap guru, and all that, I'm sure he's aware of it because it's in there 116 times. Why hasn't it been done more
I
frequently?
have an idea.
I can tell you exactly why. Pre-COVID, look up what the prime interest rates were. And I mentioned prime interest rates because that comes into the calculation. Okay? It was so
Yes, Kevin.
small.
Sorry,
It
Kevin
was so
writes in.
small.
Of course, Dom reads the whole CBA.
It was so small that it would have barely any effect on the AAV. Then came COVID, where there was no salary cap increase. And teams couldn't use it because they were scratching for every penny and they didn't know what was going to happen 2-3 years later. Now we're seeing an increased prime interest rate where it makes a difference. So the Canes, according to Frank Saravelli, approached NHL Central Registry and the NHLPA and got their blessing to use it. So they used it on Jacob Slavin's deal earlier in the summer. Okay.
But they didn't use it to the same amount, from my understanding.
It's nowhere near the same amount. I think his made a $20,000 difference in the AAV. Okay. Now the question becomes, how high can you go before the NHL says this is cap circumvention and is against the spirit of the CBA? Think back to Ilya Kovalchuk's deal.
Yes.
Against the spirit of the CBA. So they push the limit to see what the NHL will accept. And as far as I know, the contract's been filed and been approved. Okay?
Now,
people want to know how it works.
My understanding, and we'll get into the part where interest becomes a factor in a minute, because that's the very detailed part.
Yeah.
Real quick, it looks like Ian's heading out. He says, "Great podcast. Thanks for reading my comments and answering me." Of course, that's what we're all about, Ian. He says, "We're one of the best Bruins podcasts. Appreciate the kind words." Sounds like he's heading off the bed. So have a good night, Ian. Hopefully we see you again next week. But back to the contract. My understanding, very, very broad perspective at least, is in this case, they basically withheld about $400,000 per year for the 8 years of the contract, added that all up, and moved it to a 9th year of the contract where they pay that out. He still gets the money.
No.
But the cap hits
No, stop. Don't go any further because it's wrong.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to clarify it.
They took 3 years of signing bonuses, which total 15.4 $7 million and moved it to the 9th year.
Okay, so it was a signing bonuses, not the salary.
The signing bonuses were moved to year number 9.
Okay.
Without understanding how it works, you're not going to understand why they did that and how it affects the cap. So I'm going to make it simple. I'm going to use an 8-year contract, $40 million.
Perfect.
Okay. That's a $5 million AAV. Okay. Let's say they deferred $1 million to year 9. $1 million signing bonus from year 1 to year 9. That $1 million 9 years from now is not worth $1 million today. It's worth less. The way the NHL calculates it is you take the prime interest rate today at 1.25%. Okay. And I'll tell you what, guys, you don't have to do the math. Go to Puckpedia under players, and they've created a calculator to determine to do all the math for you. All you have to do is enter the contract and what's deferred plus the prime interest rate. It does all the math for you. Anyway, so that $1 million, you multiply it. You use the NHL's formula, and in 9 years, that $1 million is only worth $615,699. Okay, so that $1 million comes off the cap, and you add in $615,699. Okay, which makes the new cap hit $4,951,000, saving them $48,000 a year in the cap. So just remember this: whatever the signing bonus is worth today, or whatever his signing bonuses are today, that is moved to year 9. It's not calculated on today's dollar. It's calculated on what the league believes that dollar will be worth 9 years from now. And that's what becomes the cap hit.
So they reverse the formula and take the $1 million in 9 years and remove the current interest rate, the prime interest rate, and the extra 1.25%.
Right. And then that gets added back into the cap.
And then right, okay. So instead of paying out, like you said, the million, the cap hit being that $5 million this year, it's the $5 million minus the value of that formula, and therefore it's a lower cap hit, and that cap hit then applies for all 8 years of the contract.
Right. But in the example I gave, he would still get $1 million in 9 years. It's just not worth what $1 million is worth today. That's why players want their money up front, because it's worth more today than it is in year 8 of the contract, right?
Right. And that is a big reason why we haven't seen this done a lot, because the player has to be willing to do it.
Yeah.
And if you're offered $1 million today or $1 million in 9 years from now,
you're taking it today.
You're taking it today.
Yeah. There's a lot of risk involved for both sides. Like, what's to say, escrow is at 6% right now. What's to say in 9 years it won't be at 18%? And he's even losing more value.
Right. Now, I guess the big question comes in 8 years when he's up for a new contract. He's still getting that $1 million in year 9, regardless of if he signs another contract.
Yeah. Or in Jarvis's case, he's getting $15.4 million.
Right.
In year 9.
He's getting that money. So yeah, Kendall, as you read, Jarvis gets that money 9 years from now. Now, in this case, and a lot of our cases, a lot of us being not millionaires, we sit there and we say, well, you got $5 million coming to you this year. You got another $5 million coming next year, so on and so forth. What does it hurt to take $1 million off now?
And it does earn interest.
$600,000.
It does earn interest. I forget what the percentage rate is, but it does earn interest.
And for us to sit here and say, defer the money for 9 years from now, that's because that's what makes sense for us. If you are used to an annual salary of $5 million, but you have to pay 5% of that to an agent, you have to pay your league dues, you have to pay insurance costs for yourself, you have to pay player association fees. All of a sudden, that $5 million that you earn for the year, what would you say they take home from that, Dom, after taxes? And let's go with just at least half of it. And that's if you're in an advantage like Florida, where you don't have state income tax or anything like that. So your $5 million salary all of a sudden ain't $5 million anymore.
Right.
So it has to make sense. This is where we might see this clause take effect in Connor McDavid's next contract, because he makes enough and he gets a lot more endorsement deals. I know some people were asking how this might affect some like third liners. Like, is this something you could see a player like Trent Frederick taking advantage of as a potential third line career guy, maybe a little bit of second line time? He's someone that could get that, if he plays well, $5 million AAV.
Well, yeah, the reason this was created was for the smaller market teams, because you have the Rangers, the Leafs, the Canadians, the Bruins, the Blackhawks, and the Kings, and some others that are that just print money. They have money coming out of their wahoozes, and the small market teams couldn't compete with the upfront money, either front loaded or back loaded deals like the rich clubs could. And this was a way to help the small market teams like the Carolinas, like the Columbuses, the Winnipegs, teams like that, that, could help them not generate extra revenue, but spread their revenue out. Now, I have to tell you, the team that has the biggest advantage is Winnipeg, because of course everything is determined in US dollars, but in Canada, for Canadian teams, they use the Canadian prime interest rate, which is always higher than the American prime interest rate, which means they could backload more money the way Carolina did.
Yeah, Kevin says there, what? Cameron's, so basically the player is locking in investment for the length of the contract. It all depends on perspective too, because as Kendall points out, after thanking Dom for the explanation, most players want their money now. And so you need to have a player who looks at it in terms of taking a little less. Now, that's why we didn't see Jarvis do this for more than the signing bonuses and not for all of the signing bonuses. I'd be very interested to see which years were selected to have deferred.
I think it was 3, 4, and 7. I think.
Would 3, 4 be the years where we could potentially see a lockout?
Yeah.
So basically, he took his lockout protection and deferred it to the end of the contract.
And invested it. Because he does earn interest on it.
Right.
Now, Jeremy Swayman could really benefit with this because he's gone to business school. He can get certified by the NHLPA to be a player agent and represent himself. and save 5% in agent fees on that money in the future.
Yeah, Mr. I went to business school. I know the business side of it. Let's
There
see
you
what
go.
the business side looks like here. He could benefit from it too, because in 8 years, he has another contract waiting for him. It might not be another 8-year deal, but he has another contract. Now, I think a lot of people want to know, as well as kind of a follow-up to all this. Great. In Jarvis's case, it was an 8-year contract. What about on a shorter contract? So, for instance, let's take Swayman as an example, and just for the sake of simple math, let's pick a number that works. That's not going to be the number. Who cares? If he were to sign a 4-year bridge deal and have some of the money paid out in the 5th year,
it works the same way.
Works exactly the same way.
Exactly the same way.
So he could, in theory, take a 4-year deal, have some of it paid out in a 5th year, and when he's 30, get 2 checks basically from the Bruins, one for the deferred amount, and then one for his brand new shiny contract. Let's see. David jumps in and says, cap management is everything in the modern day NHL. More the reason hope Bruins do not hand Swayman anything over 4 years. I mean, there's a couple of different ways to look at it as far as handing out term.
So, David, let me explain it to you this way. Because I consider myself someone of an expert when it comes to the cap. So, let's say he signs an 8-year, $8 million deal. 8 years, $8 million AAV. Okay. In 4 years, that won't matter. But let's say in your case, he signs a 4-year, $7 million deal. So the Bruins are saving $4 million. But in 4 years, that $8 million deal ain't on the table now. It's $10 million.
It might even be more if the cap
or
keeps
more.
going up.
So you're now talking an 8-year deal afterwards of $10 million, where you've now just spent 8 times 2, $16 million more when you only save $4 million at the beginning.
Yeah, a prime example, and there's a comment here from Ryan I want to get to in a minute. A prime example of this, David, would be take Connor Hellebuck. He just signed last year a new 8-year contract after a bridge deal that was 6 years long. Had they signed Hellebuck to an 8-year contract, he would not be getting paid what he's getting paid right now. They would still have an extra almost $2.5 million to work with on their cap this
And
year
for 2
and
more
next
years.
year. For this
For
year
2
and
more
next
years.
year.
Yeah.
Exactly. So in that case, signing the 8-year deal would have been better for Winnipeg. Worked out better for Hellebuck. Also, another an even better example, Andrei Vasilevsky. He signed a contract after one championship or both championships? Everybody looked at that $9 million and were frantic about what they were going to do with the cap. Well, that $9 million for Vasilevsky now looks way better. And he still has, 4 years left on that deal?
4 or 5. 4.
4 years.
5.
I think he's got 4 or 5 years left on that contract. So it only looks better. If they had signed him to a 4-year deal and he needed a new one now, they're happy he had an injury last year because that's what's going to drive his value down. But they're not happy because he's so damn good, they have to pay him even more.
Right.
So Ryan asks, where's Swayman signing? Can't believe we traded Allmark before the extension was done. We spent a lot of time on that last week, Ryan. But ultimately, the deal was done when it had to be done so they could get an asset for this year's draft. And everybody talks about which way the leverage swings when it comes to the Swayman signing. Who's got the leverage, Swayman or the Bruins? Ultimately, it lies with the Bruins because they can let him sit out a year. And he's the one who suffers more from that. Do the Bruins get what they want in having Swayman sit out the year? A cup favorite, a cup contending season Well, that would remain to be seen whether Korpisalo or Bussy, or maybe they go out and make another move. Who the hell knows? They have $8 million in AAV to work with, or in cap space to work with, so they very easily could go out and make another move. It's just, it doesn't benefit anybody for him not to sign. Kendall points out 8 years gives you more cost certainty. That's why they need Swayman signed for the 8. Problem, Kendall, with going 8 years on Swayman right now, he has less than 150 games played in the NHL. He's never played more than 44 games in a single season. Not his fault
he has.
by any stretch.
Yes, he has.
Regular season games. Regular season
doesn't
games.
matter. People say he can't. He hasn't proven he can handle more than 44 games. Yes, he has. He proved it last year.
Okay.
I'm playing a word game here.
I'm going to rephrase it then. I'm going to rephrase it. He has never started more than 44 games in the regular season and then played in the playoffs.
Right.
So you don't know what's going to happen if you add 5 more games to his slate in the regular season and then go back to him in the playoffs. Can he do it again? We don't know. We've seen a guy like UC Saros do it. He started 60 games before and then gone on a good playoff run. They didn't win the cup, but that wasn't on Saros. So that's why he got money. Hellebuck last year was its own problem, but he's done well in the playoffs before for them. Vasilevsky, same thing. Those are 60-plus game workhorses. We've never seen Swayman do that. So to just hand over at 8 years, 8 AAV, that is $64 million gamble that the Jacobs family is taking. And I get it. It's easy for me to say to do it. It's not my money. But at the end of the day, if you're Don Sweeney, you have to then convince them to take an $64 million gamble and hope that it works. That's a huge risk. And I don't think there's a single team in the league that is willing to take it.
I don't know. They're all locking up their young players for 8 years, except Sider and Raymond. They're not signed yet.
They're not signed yet. There's a couple other big name free agents or RFAs who aren't signed either. So, which is kind of weird because none of them went for arbitration either. So we'll have to see. It's going to be very interesting. And I do love the new wrinkle that the deferred salary has to come up with. I will credit Puckpedia. Like you said, they were on top of that shit right away, updating that. I saw their tweet on the update. I know people are hard pressed for a cap friendly replacement. Puckpedia, my friend, is where it is at when it comes to this stuff. This stuff, they are on top of it better in some cases than cap friendly was.
Oh yeah,
because they're much quicker to produce something.
And they've always had more information readily available than cap friendly. Always have.
Yeah. Speaking real quick, did you see that the St. Louis Blues are coming out with their own version of cap friendly?
No, I didn't.
They basically took an Excel spreadsheet of their contracts and uploaded it to their website.
Really?
There's no interaction or anything with it. It's just player, term, dollar amount. That's it. It's an Excel spreadsheet with some colors on it.
Interesting.
Kevin says, I've been saying all summer that I wouldn't sign Swayman for 8 years at $8 million plus and got told I'm an idiot because he's elite and this and that. And yeah, Kevin, I've been seeing it just as much as you have. I don't see them doing it. That's why I haven't really tried to address it too much, because I really think the sweet spot for both sides is going to be that 4 or 5 year option. I mean, if you're going to sign him to an 8-year contract, you have to be willing to put something on the table that makes him want to take it. And that's where an AAV of 8 comes into play. But in that case, if I'm Swayman, I don't take 8. I ask for more because of the projection of the cap. David says, hopefully with Swayman, the best is yet to come. And also adds in, I hear you, difficult to add context in text. Let's keep track of Swayman's save percentage last year to save percentage after signing. Many teams historically have been buried in bad goaltending contracts. Howard and Kaprizov specifically named. Up until last year, you could make the case that Jordan Binnington was one too.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't living up to that, and that was only $6 million AAV.
I don't think the numbers are going to tell the story when it comes to save percentage. Just based on the defense that they're putting out in front of him this year is going to make his numbers better. Should make his numbers better.
That's part of the reason why I'm not really worried about what Korpisalo, all the fretting that people have about Jonas Korpisalo, because the defense in front of him this year is going to be light years better than what Ottawa had in front of him last year. And you can already hear it in some of the interviews he's done. You can tell that there's a weight lifted off of his shoulders just by coming to Boston. By finding stability in a new organization. You know, it's totally different vibes for him. And I've had one person try to throw 5v5 numbers at me and all this other stuff, trying to say that the two defenses were very comparable. The problem is they're not once you factor in, like, the game isn't entirely played on 5-on-5. So you can't just take 5-on-5 numbers and go, it's going to be the same. Because the Bruins, on average, spent almost an entire minute less on the power play than Ottawa did last year per game. That's 82 minutes less on the power play, or on the penalty kill, rather, than Ottawa. That's 4 periods of hockey.
Mm-hmm.
4 periods of your team having one less skater. Your defense over the course of that time is going to decline significantly. It compounds over an 82 game season. So
you got to factor in the system.
And you got to factor in the system. You got to factor in everything. So as much as we like to look at the numbers and see what kind of story they don't tell everything. Matrix says, I'm sure Korpisalo being a captain's practice is a definite confidence booster. Just being in the room. I mean, there are so many people who have talked about last year's Ottawa team, between the unrest in ownership, the unrest in the general manager, the unrest in the head coach. The vibes around that locker room going into every game was they were already down 1-0.
Yep. Or 2-0.
1 or 2-0. And yeah, okay, every goalie is going to have goals that you look back at the end of the season and go, I wish they had that. That was an easy one. They should have had it. Even Swayman has those. Vasilevsky has them. You can find them on every goalie. Patrick Waugh, Marty Brodeur, Dominic Hasek, name them, they have them. So
not Terry Sawchuk.
Fine, we'll eliminate him from the conversation.
Because I've seen him play. I'm old enough. I've seen him play.
Just for you, we'll eliminate him.
Okay.
Point being, they're all going to have them. They're going to happen a lot more when mentally the goaltender's not there and they're struggling as an organization. It just attracts more of that bullshit. We had a couple other things left to go over. Matrix adds in stability with the organization in the locker room will do wonders. 100%.
Sure it will.
There were a couple other things on our agenda here as we approach the 8 o'clock hour here on the East Coast. Let's see. I know you wanted to talk about Latvia qualifying for the 2026 Olympics and our friend Jonathan Morello. Where do you want to start between those two?
Let's start with Latvia. So big congrats to Latvia and our very own Don Slotchmelis for qualifying for the 2026 Winter Olympics. They played 3 qualifying games last week, won them all. So They're guaranteed to be in the Olympics. I'm sure Loch Mellis will be on that team because he'll be in. Well, I'm sure the NCAA will allow their players to go to the Olympics, which are in February. But on Sunday's game, they defeated France 5-2. And I have to say this about Loch Mellis. He's 20 years old, and that was already, get this, that was already his 78th, that's 78 international hockey games.
At the age of 20.
At the age of 20. And internationally, he's done very, very well. Always has. Whether he's been in 3 World Juniors, he's been at the World Championships, now the Olympics, the under 18s, under 17s, 78 games, and he's just 20 years old internationally.
Yeah, and he's, he's a solid 6'1", 180.
190 now, I believe.
190 now. Oh wow. Yeah. So, as a left-handed shot center, the Bruins should be excited about him. He's still a couple years away from being pro, which is a good thing for the organization. I mean, you add his depth behind, hopefully in the future, Poitras and then Dean Letourneau coming in behind him. By no stretch am I saying you're going to have your next Bergeron-Krejci combo. I mean, think about it. They could have had Bergeron, Savard, and Krejci as their 1, 2, 3 down the middle.
Yeah.
And right now you're looking at Loch Mellis, Poitras, and Letourneau as a core down the middle in the future, barring trades and other movement, of course. So interesting of note as well, Artur Shilovs was not on this team, but Latvia is going to be interesting. Yeah, knee inflammation, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And they're trying to save him for the Canucks season. But by 2026, that knee should be all right, I would hope. So that Latvia team should be fun and interesting to watch.
Yeah.
As they continue to get better.
And you know what? The fans in Latvia are just amazing. They just go crazy for their national team. Just absolutely crazy. Kasper Dodgemans was on the team.
That's a name.
Yeah. Edward Trollmek, former Bruin, was on the team. So there's 2 former Bruins and a future Bruin on the Latvian squad.
Yep, and there's a couple Panthers within the organization, or within the Panthers organizations. There's some NHL talent on that team, or at least pending NHL talent, really. So
it's an up and coming hockey. I don't want to say powerhouse, but hockey country. February, I believe it's February, the IHF votes on Russia and whether they'll be reinstated for the 2026 Olympics.
I believe I saw that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't even speculate on where that's going to go because February is still far enough away. And then last but not least, we had a Bruins prospect change his commitment, now going to, I believe, BU, Jonathan Morello.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that change and what it could do for his path to the NHL?
So he'll still be with in the USHL this season with Dubuque. He was originally committed to Clarkson. It would not surprise me in the least if the Bruins had something to do with this move and getting him to BU under Jay Pandolfo, head coach there, and having him in his backyard. Look, I made no secrets about it when everybody was talking about him as a potential draft pick in the 5th round. I thought, there's no way, man. This guy's a late 3rd at worst. That's where I had him picked to go. I thought the Bruins are not going to have a shot at him. And when they called his name in the 5th round, I was shocked and impressed. Here's a guy who put up a point per game in the OJHL, and still never got the love he should have. And then in the playoffs, put up 2 points per game. So not only is he going into a much better program at BU than Clarkson, he's also going to a good program in the USHL. So I think his development will be great. We should tell everybody this Sunday we're starting our prospects podcast.
You beat me to it.
We'll be talking a lot more about these guys, but I know our second podcast is when I will be releasing my points predictions for each one of these guys. Chris already has them. I did send them to you, did I not?
I have at least one of them. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure I sent it to you, but we'll be going over these guys in great detail on that podcast.
Absolutely. And as of right now, we are projected to be doing that one live, at least for the first episode this coming Sunday as well. Still a couple things to hammer out, but we'll send out an announcement when we know exactly what it'll be. But just if you're watching us on YouTube, just hit the subscribe button. You can get the little bell notification there so that we can you can get notified when this show or that show goes live, and follow the show. We're everywhere on all your socials. So if you can't find us, then pop on during one of the lives and ask us where we're at, and we'll get it. We'll make you find us if you can't. So, Kevin, he says Chris sent them to me too, and then he says that I leaked them.
Yeah. Just for everybody, if you go to Chris's profile on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it these days, you'll find the links there where you can find the podcast. Or if you go to my site, Dom.Hockey, just click on podcasts and all the links are there as well.
Yep. And we have a few other things that we're working on as well. Hopefully we have some viewers out there willing to help support the show a little bit. Dom, doing this does get a little costly. So hopefully some folks are willing to help out a little bit with that. We're working on some options for that too. So especially now that we're doing 2 of them. So do you have any other final thoughts? Kevin says we can still call it Twitter. F Elon.
Okay. Well, with the bird.
I just think it's funny that everybody calls it Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it. That seems to be the consensus of what it's called.
That's the new name. Twitter,
whatever
X, or whatever we're calling it these days.
That might as well be the URL that he uses too.
Yeah, I just the only thing I want to say, first of all, I want to apologize to everybody for my rant earlier. But I'm not apologizing to Jeremy Swayman because I meant every word that I said. I just should have left out the foul language. And
we bring the true honesty.
Yeah.
I mark off the explicit box every week on the podcast anyway.
Good. And the other thing is, just don't believe every rumor that's out there, because in the end, you're just going to find out that most of the time it's not true.
Yeah. And Kevin says kudos on still being in hockey mode. I'm full football mode. Honestly, Kevin, I didn't watch a snap of preseason. I remember being taking note, going, oh yeah, the Patriots are playing on Thursday. And then all of a sudden Friday rolls around going, oh, there was a Pats game last night. Oh, well. So,
Yeah.
Matrix says it's all hockey and snowmobile preparation mode for him up there in Maine. So it's honestly, Kevin, all of you guys who are paying attention and have stuck with us through the summer too. I know we're preparing for an amazing show on Sunday to go over all the prospects. That one should be fun. We know that it's something that we get asked about a lot when it comes to the Bruins. It's tough to keep track of for all of you, but it's fun for us. So hopefully we can make it fun for you guys. And Chaz even says no apologies necessary. It was 100% valid. Like I said, we go with the explicit box anyway, just because I don't want to be the asshole who marks it as clean and we forget one swear that was said. So, but with that, we're approaching the 8:00 hour, and I mean, we got captain's practices back. Bruin season is right around the corner. Dom, am I forgetting anything for this episode?
I think we pretty much covered it all. Hopefully by next Tuesday's show, we won't count Sundays because that's strictly about prospects. But next Tuesday's show, maybe we'll have a Jeremy Swayman signing.
I got my fingers crossed for it too, because I'm sick of. I want to finally analyze the contract and not guess the contract.
Right. Either next show or the show after, we'll probably have a signing.
Absolutely. And so with that, we'll end it just a couple minutes early. My last thought is, hug your loved ones.
Yes.
Enjoy life, the fun aspects of it. Don't hold on to anger. It's not worth it. And just fucking call an Uber.
Yeah.
You can get it with a couple taps on your phone. It's not worth it. Like we started off the show, condolences. All of our thoughts are with the Columbus Blue Jackets, Calgary Flames, organizations, and just the loss that they have. But of course, the Gaudreau family and everything that they're going through right now. Instead of celebrating a wedding, they are burying two family members. So as much as we feel the loss, I can't imagine what they're going through. So it just, like I said, hug your loved ones. Don't take life for granted, and enjoy it. As Matrix says, hockey is back, baby. Go Bees.
Hockey's back.